In today's episode of Unsolved Mysteries, we're going to be diving into the mysterious death of a Burmese woman named Rebecca Zahau. Although this case is ruled as a suicide, there are many others who speculate that some foul play was involved and that Rebecca was possibly murdered. Why did Rebecca commit suicide? Also, how did she manage to kill herself? On the other hand, if she didn't commit suicide, who killed her? Why did the murderer target specifically Rebecca? These are questions that still need answers, but let's dive deep into this case so we can come up with our own theories and speculations. Let's get into this case now. Born on March 15, 1979, Rebecca Zahau was a Burmese immigrant. She was born in Phalam, Chin State, a town in Chin Hills in northwest Burma, to her father, Kwa Hin Tang, and mother, Zung Tin Par, also known as Pari. Zahau came from a family of Chin ethnicity and was raised as a Protestant. After living in Nepal and Germany, Zahau moved to the US about 10 years before her death, while her parents and most family members resided in St. Joseph, Missouri. She had an older sister named Mary Zahau Lohner, a younger sister named Snoam Horwath, who lives in Germany, and a teenage sister named Zaina Zahau. Seems like a normal woman, but let's go over her track record to give you a better understanding of her character. In 2002, she married then 36-year-old nursing student Neil Napella of Scottsdale, Arizona, while working as an ophthalmic technician. In 2008, Zahau went unfaithful and began dating Jonas Saknai, the CEO of Medicis Pharmaceutical, while she was still married to Napella, in which she divorced Napella later on February 2011. Then in August 2009, however, Zahau was arrested for shoplifting after stealing $1,000 worth of jewelry from a Macy's store in Phoenix, Arizona, to which she pleaded guilty. And by all of her past actions, you can tell she's quite the character. On the other hand, we have Rebecca's boyfriend, Saknai. Saknai's position at Medicis made him the 9th highest paid CEO in Arizona, earning $6.4 million in 2010. His first marriage to Kimberly James resulted in a divorce and a 3-year custody fight over the couple's 2 children. Afterwards, he had a son, Maxfield Aaron Max Saknai, born on June 7, 2005, with his second wife, Dina Romano. On July 11, 2011, Zahau, Max, and Zahau's teenage sister Zina were at the Spreckles mansion in Coronado, California, which Saknai used as a summer estate. At some point during the day, Max fell face first over a second-floor banister, suffering injuries to his spinal cord and facial bones, the former of which affected his heart rate and breathing. Zahau said she was in the bathroom at the time and found Max moments later, and Zina then called 911. Max was not breathing and unresponsive and was taken to Rady's Children's Hospital. He died shortly after on July 16 due to brain damage caused by oxygen deprivation resulting from his injuries. Then on July 26, investigators ruled the boy's death as an accident, speculating that he was somehow tripped. However, a trauma doctor who examined Max prior to his death and autopsy stated to the police that he did not believe the injuries from his fall were consistent with the cardiac arrest and brain swelling experienced by him, suggesting that Max may have suffocated prior to his fall. On July 12, 2011, Zahau dropped off Zina at the airport for her flight back to Missouri, and then picked up Saknai's brother, Adam, who had just arrived on a flight from Memphis, Tennessee. Zahau, Saknai, and Adam ate dinner with a friend named Howard that evening. Zahau and Adam returned to the Spreckles mansion, while Jonah reportedly kept a vigil at Max's bedside with his mother Dina Romano. He would leave the hospital to recuperate at a nearby Ronald McDonald house. There were reports of loud music coming from the Spreckles mansion later that night. On the morning of July 13, at roughly 6:45 a.m., Adam stated that he found Zahau's nude body hanging from a balcony, with her wrists and ankles bound and her hands behind her back. Zahau was gagged with a blue long-sleeved t-shirt wrapped around her head, with sleeves double knotted and stuffed into her mouth. There was also what appeared to be tape residue on her legs. Adam immediately called 911 at 6:48 a.m., then sent a text message to his brother to inform him of the news. He cut down Zahau's body before the police arrived. Medics attempted to revive her, but pronounced her dead at the scene. Police then initiated forensic and toxicology testing on her body as part of an autopsy to determine the cause of her death. Speculations of foul play began early on in the case. However, investigators were unable to find any other DNA at the scene besides Zahau's. Then on September 2nd, the San Diego County Sheriff's Department formally announced their finding that Zahau committed suicide. Zahau's autopsy results revealed 4 instances of head trauma, about which investigators and outside commentators expressed various theories. San Diego medical examiner Jonathan Lucas stated that, quote, "Because there was evidence that she went over the balcony in a non-vertical position, she may have struck her head on the balcony on the way down," end quote. Werner Spitz, an expert witness who testified during the trial of Casey Anthony, said that it was a possibility, stating, quote, "When the body first dropped, she doesn't necessarily jump to her death, so she would drop directly downward and she could easily hit against the side of the structure from which she was hanging," end quote. However, he noted that to draw stronger conclusions, he would have preferred to see what the body looked like before the wrist bindings were removed. Forensic consultant Dr. Maurice Godwin expressed doubts, stating, quote, "The chances of bumping into the railing, going over the balcony, and hitting your head 4 times is very highly unlikely," end quote. A second autopsy on Zahau was conducted by famed pathologist Dr. Cyril Wecht at her family's request. Wecht testified he believed fractures in Zahau's throat were caused by manual strangulation, not by suicidal hanging. He further stated that he thought Zahau's death was a homicide. In addition, other inaccuracies were found with the Sheriff's Department investigation, including evidence that indicated that Zahau was sexually assaulted before her death. Family members expressed suspicions for why Zahau's hands and feet were bound. San Diego Sheriff Roy Frank stated, quote, "There are documentations of incidents throughout the country where people have secured their feet and hands as well as to commit suicide," end quote, to prevent themselves from changing their minds. Police reenacted the scenario in an effort to determine whether it would have been possible for Zahau to bind herself in that fashion, and a video demonstration in which a woman wrapped a rope around her hands several times in front of her, slipped one hand out of the binding, then placed her hands behind her back, rebound them, and tightened the bindings with the aid of a string similar to the one which police found in Zahau's hands. A message had been painted on the door of the room leading to the balcony below where the police found Zahau's body. According to Zahau's ex-husband, Napella, it read, quote, "She saved him. Can you save her?" end quote. Officials initially declined to confirm this. In media comments, however, Sheriff Gore only stated that it was not a clear suicide note. However, investigators took it as further evidence of suicide. Zahau liked to paint as a hobby and had signed her paintings in the past. Her sibling contended that the message did not match her handwriting. Napella also stated the note, quote, "did not appear to be something Zahau would have written," end quote. Police served Verizon and AT&T with search warrants to obtain cell phone billing records and took Zahau's Samsung Focus cell phone as evidence. According to AT&T records, from roughly 8 p.m. until 10 p.m., Zahau talked and texted with her older sister Mary, who confirmed that Zena had arrived home safely. At 10:48 p.m., Zahau received a text from Nina Romano, the twin sister of Shaq Knight's ex-wife, who wanted to stop by the house and talk about Max's accident, but Zahau did not reply to that message. Police said Zahau checked her voicemail a few hours later at 12:50 a.m. and listened to a message. Billing records did not show who left that message, however. Police stated that it was a message regarding the worsening of Max's condition, but declined to confirm at the time who left the message. Mary stated that the police told her it was from Jonah Shacknight. The message was deleted afterwards, meaning that police and Zahau's family never heard the contents of the message. Investigators initially did not attempt to power up or operate the cell phone, fearing that they might overwrite evidence contained in its memory. Instead, they tried to determine whether forensic software was available, which would allow them to examine the model of that phone. Then on August 15, unable to identify any such technology, a detective turned on the phone and conducted a manual search of it, finding that the voicemail message was not stored on the phone. They did not request that AT&T try to retrieve the deleted message from its servers. Later, on September 21st, an investigator announced that they will be using new technology to copy the phone's data for further investigation. Then in early October, investigators completed their second examination of the phone, stating that they did not uncover any additional information and would soon return it to Zahau's family. Zahau and Max's death drew intense public and media scrutiny, July 14th, Medicis had its sharpest one-day decline in stock price since February. News of the investigations received international coverage in various countries including Brazil, New Zealand, Finland, Spain, and the UK throughout July and August. In early September, various Forbes writers, including true crime writer Kathy Scott and lawyer Victoria Pinchon, expressed doubts about the investigators' conclusion. Pinchon described this ruling as an embarrassing public blunder. The Daily Beast published a column by trial lawyer Roy Black in which he criticized half-baked theories about Zahau's death, in particular stating that the lack of DNA evidence, quote, "How could anyone do all this without leaving behind scintilla of microscopic evidence? They would have to have been wearing a full rubber suit or some type of spacesuit and levitated over the scene," end quote. Called on the media and public to stop calling it a murder. Then on September 11th, it was reported that local Coronado author Kathleen McKenna would be writing a book on the case. McKenna expressed doubts that Zahau's death was a suicide. Family members and people close to Zahau expressed doubt that she committed suicide. Her younger sister, Snoam Horwath, insisted that, quote, "Becky did not commit suicide. My sister was murdered," end quote. Her former trainer also stated that, quote, "She was always happy and always smiling when she came in. I didn't see a problem or anything like that," end quote. Family members disputed police characterizations of Zahau as depressed, describing her instead as a happy person. Furthermore, they state that Zahau believed as a Christian that suicide was wrong. After the suicide ruling, Napella was quoted as stating, quote, "I would not believe Rebecca would commit suicide. It's out of character," end quote. However, Sheriff Gore, who investigated the death, stated of the family's reluctance to accept the suicide ruling, quote, "We laid out the case extensively to them in Missouri to answer their questions, and it's unfortunate Zahau's sister can't accept the results," end quote. On September 7th, the family launched the website justiceforrebecca.org, seeking donations to fund their own investigation into Zahau's death. Although the website is currently down, the family did launch a GoFundMe campaign to raise money for attorney fees. The description states, quote, "Despite being faced with roadblock after roadblock by the team of lawyers from across the country, paid for by the alleged murderer's rich brother, we were able to get the case before a jury for a trial that started February 26, 2018. We may not have the wealth, but we have faith and truth on our side. We have to bring experts to prove that Rebecca could not do what the SDSD said she did, and her injuries are consistent with murder. These experts are very expensive, and we are in dire need of help to pay these fees." In late September, they continued to demand that the case be reopened. Then on September 20, 2011, Jonah Shacknai wrote a letter to the California Attorney General Kamala Harris requesting a state review of the investigation. Shacknai himself did not doubt the findings of investigation, but said he hoped to find a review would bring confidence, comfort, and resolution to others close to Zahau. However, Chief Assistant Attorney General Dane Gillette replied the following day, stating, quote, "We must decline your invitation to review this investigation at this time," end quote. On September 30th, family members appeared on NBC's Today and called for a completely independent investigation by the State Attorney General's office. Zahau's family hired a Seattle attorney, Ann Bremer, who derided the medical examiner's conclusion, stating, quote, "This will be the first case in the history of the world that a woman killed herself like this. It's ridiculous on the face of it," end quote. Dan K. Webb of Winston & Strawn LLP, a lawyer for Jonah Shacknai, alleges that other statements of Bremer's imply that Shacknai used his wealth and profile to improperly influence the investigation. He sent a cease and desist letter to Bremer warning that certain statements of hers constituted defamation, as well as being, quote, "highly insensitive on a human level," and contributing to the harsh and unkind glare of national media frenzy. However, Jim Edwards of BNET suggested that it was highly unlikely that Shacknai would actually sue, as it would simply bring more publicity to the case. He expected that the situation effectively, quote, "leaves the Zahau family to continue their claims unchallenged," end quote. Shacknai hired public relations firm Citrick & Company to represent him the week after Zahau's death. In response to media inquiries, a Citrick & Company employee stated that he had hired their firm to handle his large volume of incoming calls in the days after the deaths, to give him time to grieve and make arrangements for the funeral. Citric and Company executives later held discussions with journalists whom they believed had errors in their reporting on the case. San Diego Sheriff Bill Gore finally announced on September 2, 2011, that Zahau's death was a suicide, while the younger Shacknight's death had been ruled as an accident, and that neither was the result of foul play. Members of Zahau's family disputed this finding and filed a $10 million wrongful death lawsuit against Jonas Shacknight's brother Adam. The jury in that civil trial found Adam Shacknight responsible for Zahau's death and granted her family a $5 million judgment for a loss of love and companionship, as well as an additional $167,000 for the loss of financial support Zahau would have provided her mother and siblings. In February 2019, Shacknight appealed the judgment, with the defense arguing procedural errors and juror misconduct. Prior to final arguments being presented to the judge, Shacknight's insurance company and the Zahau family reached a settlement of $600,000, resulting in a civil case being dismissed with prejudice and vacating the original $5 million judgment. At the end of the day, the death of Rebecca Zahau is a mysterious and an odd case. There are mixed autopsy reports ruling her death as a possible suicide or a possible homicide. Whatever the truth may be, it's still a tragedy that Rebecca's life has been taken away and her loved ones are still grieving to this very day. Was Rebecca Zahau murdered? If so, who is the murderer? But if she wasn't murdered, why did she commit suicide if she was known to be a devout Christian? These are questions that still need answers, hence why this case is unsolved. Hey guys and gals, this is Mr. Shin Ramen, and I just want to thank you for making it this far. Did you enjoy the video? If so, it would be greatly appreciated if you can leave a like on this video and subscribe to this channel for more future content. Till next time, stay safe and stay scared.